Exposed, haunting secrets of a cargo ship. Sinister captain and his 7 forbidden rules in Alaska. Sarah's heart raced as the cargo ship loomed before her, an iron giant wrapped in darkness, just like the whispers she'd heard from the townsfolk. Every evening, when the last rays of sun dipped behind Mount Dewey, the shadows lengthened, and an eerie silence blanketed Wrangell. The ship, known as the Chilling Tide, wore her past like an anchoring weight, secrets hidden in rust and grime. Stories of crew members who disappeared without a trace haunted her thoughts, fables tangled with truth. Yet she needed this job. Her son, Tommy, depended on her, and desperation clung to her like the salty mist off the ocean. The first night on board had felt off from the very start. The captain, a brooding man named Captain Jonah, eyed her with an unsettling calm, the kind that sent shivers down her spine. The crew moved like phantoms, whispering among themselves in low tones, avoiding her gaze. What were those 7 forbidden rules she'd overheard? The fear in their eyes had told her more than their words ever could. As the days turned into weeks, the strange occurrences intensified. Shadows danced just out of reach in the hold, and disembodied footsteps echoed through the narrow corridors. The crew's smiles grew more forced with each troubling night, their laughter a brittle shell of normalcy. She'd find them standing on the deck, murmuring to the mist, offering up offerings to the sea that Sarah couldn't comprehend. The captain's orders became increasingly bizarre, delivered through clenched teeth, layered with something sinister. A chill would settle into her bones whenever he turned that eerie smile toward her. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. One evening, under the cover of fog, Sarah overheard the crew talking about someone from the last run, another worker who strayed too close to the captain's rules. They had ventured into uncharted waters, and only darkness came back to tell the tale. The hairs on her arms stood up, visions of dark secrets swirling within a tempest of dread. Was this the fate that awaited her if she questioned too much? That night, loss pressed against her chest in a vice grip. The boat rocked violently as a storm rolled in, the waves howling like angry spirits. Out on the deck, she saw the captain, his figure framed in the flickering lantern light, an unsettling silhouette against the storm. Everything in her screamed to turn back, to abandon this cursed ship, but the ship's grip on her life twisted like a vice. When a horrifying incident forced a life-or-death confrontation with Captain Jonah, Sarah stood breathless, her heart pounding fiercely against her rib cage. Willing to confront the terror that had taken her mind hostage, she noticed the unease growing in the crew, their eyes wide with fear and disbelief. Veins of panic raced through her. Each choice echoed with the weight of her tether to her son, each whisper promising doom and each heartbeat thudding with urgency. In that moment of despair, Sarah knew she was on the edge of something unfathomable. The ocean crashed beneath them, the air thick with tension, and as she shouted into the night, her voice swallowed by the abyss, she realized this was not just about her fate. The darkness around her whispered of forgotten stories and tragic fates. Would she decipher the captain's 7 forbidden rules, or would she too become another ghost on the Chilling Tide? The storm's fury howled, battering the Chilling Tide mercilessly, tossing Sarah to the floor as she clung to the rail. Water sprayed around her, an icy slap that cut deep into her skin. The whole ship felt alive, creaking and groaning as if it were pleading for help. Dread pooled in her stomach, and with each crash of a wave, visions of the crew's missing friends flashed through her mind. Ghostly faces, eyes blank with despair, seemed to loom in the corner of her vision. "Get inside." Captain Jonah's voice sliced through the chaos, sharp as the cold winds. He was a shadow against the raging storm, commanding yet menacing. Sarah hesitated but then scrambled to obey, every muscle in her body screaming at her to comply and survive. The dark insides of the ship felt even more foreboding, the shadows shifting dangerously close as she stumbled down the narrow corridor. The crew huddled like lost sheep, their features dimly lit by flickering lanterns. Fear hung heavy in the air, palpable and suffocating. Eyes darted away as she entered, silence clamping down like a heavy shroud. "What is happening?" she whispered, hoping they would share their dread, but every face turned away, cloaked in denial. Suddenly, there was a crash above them, a loud, terrible sound that reverberated through the bones of the ship. Voices spilled out into a panic, and Jonah's sharp command pierced the chaos. "Stay here." His voice was authoritative, but Sarah couldn't stand by. Something deep in her surged, her mother's instincts screaming that she could protect her son by learning the truth. With a creeping resolve, she slipped out into the storm. The wind clawed at her clothes as she moved across the deck, shadows swirling like dancing phantoms. They beckoned her a pull that was both vibrant and dreadful. The captain was gone, lost in the chaos, or perhaps up to something more sinister. As she moved toward the hold where strange sounds echoed, the presence of something unreal washed over her. An ethereal chill brushed against her skin, and suddenly she remembered the crew's whispers about the forbidden rules. Rule 1, do not disturb the ancient markings. The markings. Panic surged anew as she realized she had seen symbols carved deep into the wood of the cargo hold, flickering in and out of sight like embers just before being snuffed out. What lay below? Was she about to unveil the ship's deepest horrors? Just as she reached the hatch, a deafening clap of thunder shook the ship. The lights flickered before dimming entirely, plunging the deck into darkness more profound than any she had known. In that moment, every caution she heard rang in her ears like the chilling toll of a bell. Those who chased secrets, often met them in cruel forms. She felt drawn forward, unable to turn back now that the call had come for her. Holding her breath, she pulled the hatch open, descending into the abyss below. Only the echoes of her heartbeat kept her company as shadows twisted and warped, whispering to her, "What have you done, Sarah?" The voice was close, too close, an echo of the storm, or perhaps a wretched remnant of the crew's fate. Heart racing, she plunged deeper into the dark, mind racing with the weight of the captain's last words. Would she discover the captain's secrets or join them in their buried despair? The sound of waters rising echoed behind her as she pressed on, and somewhere in the depths of the hold, she could hear the soft slosh of something moving. Was it the ocean, or something else? With every step she took, one thing became clear: whatever lay ahead was as much a part of the chilling tide as the sea itself. Would she sink with the secrets, or would she claw her way back to the light? The darkness consumed her, swallowing Sarah whole. Each step felt heavier, weighed down by a sense of dread that clung like ice to her bones. The sloshing sound grew clearer now, the waters whispering secrets. She paused, her breath hitching, the icy air stinging her lungs. What if it was something alive? The thought prickled at her skin. Swallowing hard, she crept forward, her fingers brushing against the damp, cold wood of the walls. The air was thick with the stench of mildew and something else, a rot that seemed to reach out to her, curling around her like a serpent. Then, without warning, a lantern flickered on, illuminating the hold in a sickly yellow glow. Shadows twisted grotesquely, revealing crates stacked high, their contents hidden deep. She wished she could turn back, run back up to the storm, to the chaos above, but the memories of those empty-eyed crew faces stopped her. She needed to know. "Jonah?" she called, voice shaking, echoing back to her like a taunt. Silence followed, thick and oppressive. She moved deeper, each creak of the floorboards beneath her a reminder of her fragility. Then she saw it, a marking, the same symbols she had glimpsed before. Only now, they glowed faintly, almost pulsing, as if alive. Her heart raced as she traced one with trembling fingers, feeling an electric jolt surge through her body. Images flashed before her eyes, storms, cries for help, faces twisted in agony. The ship wasn't just haunted, it was alive, and it thrived on the fears and sorrows of those aboard. "Sarah," the voice again, slithering like smoke. "You shouldn't have come here." She spun around, eyes wide, and nearly lost her footing as a figure emerged from the shadows. It was Jonah, but his face was pale, haunted, marked with the torment of the souls they had lost. "You must leave this place," he urged, voice low, urgent. You must forget what you've seen. Forget? How can I? She shot back, anger mingling with fear. They're gone, Jonah. They're all gone. What happened to them? He stepped closer, eyes flickering, as if he were wrestling with something within. It wasn't supposed to be this way, we didn't understand. The rules were there to keep us safe. The rules? Her pulse quickened. What rules? He hesitated, shadows dancing over his face. There are 7. Each one has a consequence. Breaking them brings the darkness. His words ignited a firestorm of questions in her mind, swirling and crashing like the waves outside. Which one did you break? She took a step toward him, desperate for answers. Do not disturb the ancient markings. It's never just a warning, it's a curse. He reached out, grasping her arm, but his touch was ice cold. We have to go. Now. The lantern flickered violently, casting eerie shapes that distorted their features. Suddenly, the hold shook, and a low, primal roar echoed from the depths. The water surged, rising like a beast awakened from slumber. Her heart raced with the mounting terror that they were not alone. Run! Jonah shouted, panic flashing in his eyes. But even as she turned, the walls of the hold began to shift, closing in around her. With a surge of adrenaline, Sarah tore away from him, sprinting back towards the hatch. But the shadows writhed, reaching for her, pulling her back. They seemed alive, hungry. She clawed her way forward, desperate to escape the encroaching darkness. Just as she reached the hatch, a hand shot out from behind her. It wasn't Jonah. Help me, a voice groaned, desperate and hollow. Another figure emerged from the depths, one of the missing crew, a ghastly shell of who they once were. Their stare was vacant, mouth twisted in a silent scream. Terror gripped Sarah's heart as she realized whatever they had unearthed was beyond anything she could have imagined. She swung the hatch open, but the storm outside was no longer roaring with chaos, it had settled into an ominous calm. What is happening? She gasped, glancing back into the black abyss just as more hands reached toward her, no longer just shadows but dark figures emerging from the water. With the world spinning, she had to choose: leap into the storm or face those seeking vengeance from the eternity below. Sarah. Jonah's voice broke through, but she had only one thought etched in her mind: the storm might be less terrifying than what waited below. As she hesitated, the chanting began, a low, throaty drone that grew louder, drowning out the wind. The curse, would she succumb to the darkness, or could she unravel the truth of the chilling tide before it consumed her too? The shadows danced eagerly, and the whispers of her crew mingled with the storm, promising unspeakable horrors. It was time to decide. The hatch creaked on its hinges, and Sarah felt the cool whisper of wind brush against her face. The illusion of calm outside felt like a lie, a mask that concealed the chaos below. Jonah's voice cracked through the silence again, desperate. Sarah. Don't think, just jump. But the dark figures were closer now, their ghastly forms seeming to swell, an unknowable wrath rising from the depths of the ship. Her breath caught in her throat as their faces came into view, twisted, anguished souls that were once her crewmates, now mere puppets of the shadows that prowled the hold. Help him, one of them rasped, but before the plea could finish, it dissolved into a low groan, echoing with pain. The sight sent chills racing down Sarah's spine, freezing her in place. Had she truly dreamed of escape, or had the curse twisted her mind? Sarah. Jonah's voice cut through her fog of fear. He reached toward her, and for a split second, she thought she could see a glimmer of hope in his eyes beneath the terror. Was it just an illusion? We have to break the curse. I need your help. The chanting started again, a guttural sound that reverberated through the ship's spine, wrapping around her, squeezing the air from her lungs. The curse they recited over and over, each repetition pulling her closer to the edge, drawing her back toward the shadows. Leave me! She cried, voice choking. Her instincts screamed for her to run, yet something deeper, something primal, begged her to stay and confront the horror. "The markings are the key," Jonah shouted, urgency lacing his words. "If you decipher them, you can reverse it." Her heart pounded in her ears. What if you're wrong? She could barely hear herself, the chanting still drowning her thoughts. The figures lurked just beyond the hatch, whispering promises of suffering and redemption, their hands reaching out like ravenous vipers. Then, something shifted inside her. A brimming pool of anger bubbled up against the paralyzing dread. What's the worst that could happen? She said, more to herself than to Jonah. She was already lost, teetering on the edge of a fate worse than death. Taking a deep breath, she spun around, the lantern flickering wildly, casting frantic shadows across the holds as she stumbled towards the glowing markings etched into the wood. Their rhythm felt alive, each pulse resonating with her heart. "Stay back!" Jonah shouted at the figures creeping closer. Their haunting eyes bore into her, promising torment that twisted her stomach. But fear was overtaken by determination. If she was to break the cycle, she had to confront them, the very embodiment of the ship's curse. Fingers trembling, she pressed her palm against the closest symbol. It was warm, almost breathing, alive under her touch. Visions flooded her mind, storms crashing on icy shores, anguished faces calling out for help, echoing betrayal mixed with the hope of salvation. "What's happening?" Jonah's voice was a frenzy of panic, urging her to pull away. But she couldn't move. The more she pressed, the more visceral images overwhelmed her, each filled with despair and terror yet tethered to a sense of responsibility. Suddenly the chant changed, morphing into indecipherable screams. The dark figures writhed, contorting in agony as if her engagement was pulling a thread on something far larger, far more sinister. The ship groaned and trembled, the walls closing in around her like a vice. As she felt the energy pulsate through her palm, the markings flared brighter, illuminating the hold in a furious light. The ghostly hands of her fellow crew began to recede, dragging back into darkness. "Sarah!" Jonah's voice was barely a whisper now. "What are you doing?" "I'm trying to break the curse," she shouted back, determination igniting within her. But with that declaration came the realization that she might not have the strength. Then, with terrifying clarity, she understood. "What if I can't?" The thought engulfed her, wrapping around her chest like a band of iron. In the flickering light, the shadows grew bolder, rising, more animate, and the broken faces of her crew came into sharper focus. She had to finish this. The lair of horror waited, waiting for her one mistake. But as the chanting reached its climax, the air thickening with a palpable tension, she felt the walls shake, as if the ship itself were screaming to be freed. Would she unravel the horror that threatened to consume them all, or would she succumb to the depths of despair like those before her? The answer loomed just beyond her reach, tantalizing and terrifying, echoing in the dark. The curse with the walls trembling and shadows rising. She braced herself for what came next. In that moment, she knew the choice was no longer just about survival, it was about uncovering a truth that could change everything or seal her fate forever. The ship shuddered beneath her as if sharing in her anxiety, the reverberations of the curse echoing in her bones. Sarah pressed her palm harder against the glowing marking, feeling its warmth seep into her skin, anchoring her to a moment in time where hope mingled with despair. The ship felt alive, a monstrous beast awakening from slumber, vibrating with memories coded in sorrow. "Sarah, the hatch!" Jonah shouted, his voice barely cutting through the rising chaos. The silhouettes swirled around her, thumping hearts and cries melding into one cacophonous choir, all pleading for release. Ignoring him, Sarah pushed forward. She had seen the faces, witnessed the anguish that bound them to this hellish realm, and a fierce resolve ignited within her. "I won't to let you suffer any more." She screamed into the void, feeling her voice echoed back to her, twisted and broken. The markings blazed brighter, illuminating the entire hold in a spectral glow. Every shadow shifted, retreating yet still hovering near the edges, their grasp sinister, clenching as if fearing the light would wash them away. The images under her skin clawed at her consciousness, her mind swirling with chaos as fragments of the crew's final moments danced past her eyes like fireflies extinguished too soon. Suddenly, a surge of energy cracked through the air. It clenched Sarah's heart like a vice. The voices rose in pitch, chanting as if the very walls screamed their rage, rending the air with palpable terror. The curse! The curse! They gasped for breath, each word a bitter truth, each repetition a reminder of eternal darkness. She felt herself pulled toward the other symbols, their glow beckoning with urgency. But a fear gnawed at her. What if this was all a trap? What if releasing them only meant binding herself forever to the ship, her soul entwined in the curse? But just as despair threatened to drown her, a face emerged from the shadows, a face she recognized. "Sarah, please," it whispered, soft yet chilling. It was Jake, a crewmate lost to the depths of despair. The agony in his eyes twisted an empathy so raw it made her chest ache. Her heart wobbled between mercy and survival. Did she truly want to save them, or was it a desperate grasp for redemption? "I can't do it," Jonah roared, desperation slicing through the tension. "You know what you have to do." Drawing a deep breath, Sarah once again pressed her palm against the surface, the warmth radiating through her fingers into her very core. The symbols pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat, and she felt something shift in the air, like the weight of all the torment finally snapping. A shiver crept up her spine as she squeezed her eyes shut. She focused on her resolve, letting it fill her until it overflowed. By the power of the ocean's tears she began, and as the words left her lips, they transformed, morphing with the chanting. Each syllable rolled off her tongue like cold steel, and all the souls within the ship responded, their energy spiraling together like a cyclone. The walls trembled with anguish, a deep rumble vibrating through the wooden beams, as if the very bones of the vessel protested. Shadows writhed and arched around her, echoing back as the figures shifted closer. Desperate faces beckoned, twisted in horror and pain. "I will not give in." The light around her intensified, searing with sharp clarity as the markings flared to life, casting malignant shadows back and forth, battling for supremacy. Just when it felt like the forces were colliding, a sudden quiet enveloped the whole, a silence both deafening and stark, that breath of stillness. The truth buried within the curse loomed close. The air thickened, electric with both promise and peril. It felt as if the ship held its breath, waiting for the next move, but then, the calm broke. The shadows lunged, their eyes glimmering with hatred and despair. They descended toward Sarah like a storm. "You will belong to us," they shrieked, voices melding into an icy wind that chilled her to the bone. A pulse of sheer panic ignited in her chest. She had to decide quickly. Embrace their fate or fight against the tide. With resolve fueled by adrenaline, she readied herself to confront the past buried deep. Because whatever the truth was, she wouldn't let it consume her. The choice slipped through her fingers, elusive as the light dimmed. As voices faded to a distant scream, Sarah braced herself for what lay ahead. Eyes narrowing, she prepared to unravel the curse or face an eternity condemned. And just as she leaned into the darkness, a revelation flickered, a whisper promising dread but hinting at an escape. "You're not alone." Was this a trick of the curse, or something more sinister that had been waiting beneath the surface all along? The answer felt as close as the escaping screams, echoing in the air, but the shadows began to close in. What would she choose next? The shadows spiraled around her, tightening their grip like a noose. Their cries echoed in her ears, a maddening symphony of despair. "Sarah! We're losing her." Jonah's panicked voice sliced through the chaos. The world twisted as she felt the weight of their torment descend. She couldn't look away from Jake. His anguished stare tormented her heart, and all she could think of was every moment she spent with him before the ship became a floating nightmare. The anger of the cursed souls enveloped her like a suffocating fog. Deep breaths. Focus. By the power of the ocean's tears she struggled to repeat, but the words caught in her throat. The shadows surged, their forms morphing into grotesque silhouettes. They snarled and hissed, clawing at her with icy fingers, dragging her closer to their dark embrace. Was it too late? Had she already become ensnared? With every ounce of strength, she ripped her gaze from Jake's face and scanned the glowing markings on the walls. The symbols pulsed beneath her palm, whispering promises of release, their warmth igniting a flicker of hope deep in her core. "I will not be your prisoner," she shouted, her voice carving through the shadows with newfound ferocity. In a merciless response, the shadows shrieked, a cacophony of rage and sorrow that threatened to drown her. "Release us!" They lunged, their intentions clear, and fear engulfed her. Was her resolve strong enough to combat centuries of torment? With trembling hands, she pressed harder against the markings. Suddenly, immersed in the glow of the sigils, Sarah felt something unfurl within her. It was raw, a kind of power connected to everything that sailed these cursed waters. Where dread once gripped her, courage surged, pulsing in sync with the shadow's agony. "Release them!" she shouted, conviction ringing clear. The lights of the symbols blazed brighter, casting a radiant barrier that repelled the encroaching darkness, forcing the tortured souls back. A howl rattled through the hold, howls of fury that gripped at her skin. Sarah took a step forward, the ship creaking beneath her determination. "You think you can claim me?" she shouted, heart pounding. "I will take no part in your suffering." As the shadows writhed, several figures broke free. She caught glimpses of familiar faces, their gazes filled with a mix of gratitude and warning. They were the cursed people taken too soon, bound by regret and despair. But Jake remained, entwined in the now fading shadows, pleading eyes wide. "Don't let them take you, Sarah," he cried, the anguish reverberating within her. She reached for him, torn between her growing strength and the dampening encroachment of despair pulling him back. Were the shadows lying? Would saving him mean binding herself to the curse forever? "No," she shouted, dismissing the doubt. "I'll find another way." With a deep breath, she concentrated, calling forth every ounce of hope and despair that the crew had once felt. The air vibrated with her emotion. The ship echoed her, and for a heartbeat, everything stilled. The figures hovering between life and death paused. Jonah stood frozen, eyes wide with fear. "Set them free." The words cut through the stillness, an imploring plea mingled with determination, rising from every corner of the hold. The shadows reluctantly faltered, their grip loosening as if her resolve could burn them clean. In that frozen moment, a surge of light shot from the symbols, lancing through the shadows. The hold gleamed in a surreal luminosity as if time itself held its breath. And then a crack split the serenity. The walls trembled violently. A thunderous boom echoed, rupturing the moment. The cacophony of voices crescendoed into a deafening roar, and the hold shook violently, a warning that the curse was not ready to release them. A harsh wind swept through, threatening to blow her away from her place. The shadows bellowed in outrage, but they were no longer indomitable. No longer insurmountable. Sarah clung to the radiant warmth of the markings, every part of her straining to pull the threads of despair from Jake, to seize the moment as the ship erupted with energy. It felt almost alive, vibrating with the promise of liberation, but Jake's face twisted as the shadows clawed back at him desperately. "Sarah! Help me!" The hold distorted, plunged into chaos again, the energy fluctuating with wild tides. In that moment, the weight of the decision crashed down upon her. Would she grasp onto the past, risking her soul's tie to the ship forever? Or could she sever the bond and fight for her freedom? As darkness clawed at her, she prepared her heart. This wasn't just about survival, it was about breaking the chains that bound them all. But what lurked beyond that promise? A darker truth awaited, one that could unravel the very fabric of her reality. Without hesitation, she shouted, "Tell me what to do." But would the answer come in time? The shadows swirled, ominous and eager to consume yet again. The shadows recoiled for a moment, as if startled by her intensity. But they were quick to regroup, rearing back like a wave ready to crash. Sarah's heart raced as she felt their icy breath brush against her skin, a bitter reminder of the dark truth that loomed. Jake's cries echoed through the chaos, weaving into the fabric of her own fear. "Don't let them take you, Sarah." You have to fight. His desperation sharpened every syllable, etching itself into her soul. The symbols on the wall pulsed in response to her turmoil. They called to her, beckoning her to embrace the power they promised. It was a seductive invitation, one that promised ultimate control over the darkness, but at what cost? Enough! She shouted. I'll set you free, all of you. But I need to know what binds you. The shadows roared, a primal sound that vibrated through the ship, wrapping around her and squeezing like a vice. She felt the weight of their pain, twists of betrayal and confusion merged with longing. But hidden beneath that chaos, a single thought surfaced, clear and chilling. They sought revenge. Their thirst was relentless. Why? What do you want from me? She demanded, voice steady despite the storm swirling around her. A silence fell, a heavy pause that made her heart pound. Was this a trap? The shadows shuddered, retreating as if considering their next move. And then, as if from the very depths of the cursed sea, a voice broke through. It was guttural, tempered, breaking glass, echoing with centuries of rage. Break the cycle. Sacrifice the one who bound us. Sarah's blood ran cold. They wished for her to condemn someone to their fate, to become the very monster she fought against. Her mind raced. It was a test of her resolve. Who? She whispered, a tendril of dread weaving its way through her thoughts. Your beloved. The voice hissed, a menacing whisper that sent shivers down her spine. Let him choose. One shall live, one shall die. Panic surged through her. The burden of choice loomed heavy, a knife poised above the tender flesh of her life with Jake, tempting her to swing. Could she betray him to the very darkness she sought to escape? Jake! She cried, longing to break through the shadows that clamped around him. Please, I need you to choose. But the clutching figures hissed louder, drowning out her plea. Save yourself, or ruin him. The shadows shifted, swirling and forming grotesque faces that taunted her with memories from her past, the laughter, the smiles, the unguarded moments with Jake now clouded with doom, the clash of emotions twisted inside her. Heartache mixed with fortitude. How could she save him, knowing the cost? As lightning cracked through the dim hold, illuminating their torment, Susan caught a glimpse of the sigils, their light unwavering. Messy lines connected the patterns, creating a web that seemed almost alive, throbbing with intensity. Let me show you, she breathed, with every ounce of her force, she willed the sigils to shine even brighter, hoping they might reveal the way. Jake, listen. Draw strength from our love. We can break this together. The shadows hissed, furious at her defiance. They lunged again, grasping and clawing. Yet, she held firm, anchoring herself to hope. The ship shuddered violently, tilting under the weight of their agony, the balance shifting dangerously. There was no time for doubt. Make your choice. The voice roared, shaking the very foundations around her. But the darkness was not her only enemy. Fear layered thick in her chest. If she fought them off, could she save Jake without sealing their fate? She could feel the air thrumming, crackling with impending doom. She reached for Jake, eyes meeting his. We can fight this, but you must trust me. But the shadows lunged once more, intent on pulling her back into their dark embrace. Frantic whispers swept through the air, racing past her ears, and her heart stuttered in uncertainty. What if this wasn't just about saving him? What if the shadows had something altogether more sinister planned? The rumble of the ship grew louder, an ominous roar that drowned out her thoughts. Something was breaking. Would it shatter her soul or set her free? Choose, the voice echoed, a menacing promise. But did she even have a choice left at all? As the final grasp of darkness closed around her, Sarah felt a shift. The energy of the symbols pulsed almost like a heartbeat, reminding her of the power she harbored within. Did she dare unlock it? Would she become the monster they expected? Time was slipping away, and she knew soon the choice would not just be hers. With breath caught in her throat, she turned back to the symbols, knowing the truth would soon be laid bare. What awaited her on the other side of that revelation? Despair or a chance to rewrite fate? The shadows swirled, a storm waiting to unleash. The storm erupted as if on cue, with waves crashing violently against the sides of the ship, shaking it and sending Sarah staggering. The shadows pressed closer, wrapping around her legs like thick, cold vines. Each hiss of the darkness felt like icy fingers tracing her spine, tightening their grip. Sarah! Jake's voice broke through the turmoil, vibrant in its desperation. Remember who you are. Fight! Fight! The word echoed in her mind, merging with the pulsing symbols on the ship's walls. There was something there, beneath the surface, something she had to understand. Break the cycle. The guttural voice roared again, reverberating through her bones. Let the tide of vengeance cleanse the past. What did that mean? What past were they referencing? The air around her felt thick, electrically charged with anticipation. With her heart racing, she focused on the symbols, trying to decipher their meaning, their connection to the shadows encircling them. Jake! She shouted, her voice rising above the tempest. Think. We need to uncover the truth behind them. What binds the shadows? What do they? A sudden crash reverberated through the ship, splitting the air. The shadows recoiled, their hissing retreating momentarily. In that brief silence, Sarah felt a pulse of energy between her and Jake, a tether forged in love and hope. In that instant, she knew they had to expose the darkness, but the shadows quickly regained their composure, surging forth with renewed fury. They were relentless, feeding off the fear that surged through Sarah. She had to act. No more hesitation. Listen! She screamed, raising her hands to the sigils. This isn't the end. I will not sacrifice him. The symbols reacted, glowing fiercely. For a moment, she thought she could delve deeper into their meaning, like peeling back layers of an onion. As each layer unveiled a truth, she felt a darkness from her own past surfacing: the death of her sister, the burden she carried, guilt festering and twisting into something no light could touch. How could you betray me? The shadows whispered, their voices intertwining, melding into a singular anguished cry that echoed the question she had asked herself 1,000 times. The waves roared outside, and the ship became a living thing, tilting precariously. Adrenaline surged with clarity as she faced her own demons. No! She shouted again, a forceful declaration of her refusal to be shackled by their pain. I will not be your pawn. The shadows shrieked, a cacophony of rage, as their forms shifted and distorted. Faces appeared twisted, familiar, unrecognizable, threatening to drown her in despair. Each visage told a story of grief, betrayal, or lost love. But she had seen those faces before, in her nightmares. They were people she once knew, faces lost beneath the weight of her guilt. Let him go, she ordered, the words barely escaping her lips as she held Jake's gaze. Set us both free. The darkness surged, whipped up by her defiance. It clawed at her, trying to pull her under, grasping, pleading, threatening until its desperation became tangible. The storm outside mirrored the turmoil within, the ocean itself roaring in protest. Choose. The voice yelled again, its tone changing, almost pleading. You have the power to end this. One shall live, one shall die. Sarah's vision swam, the metaphors becoming concrete. At her core, she felt a brilliant light merging with her fear. If she could harness both the darkness and the love she felt for Jake, maybe she could rewrite their fate. That in one powerful action, she pushed forward, raising her hands to unleash everything she felt: the heartache, the guilt, the fiery love, channeling it through the sigils. The symbols shimmered and pulsed violently, responding to her fervor. But would it be enough? The shadows writhed, their shapes becoming monstrous, hungry for the sacrifice they demanded. The ship groaned under the pressure of both forces colliding. Do it! Jake shouted, his voice igniting her courage. Together! She yelled, and at that moment, a blinding light poured from her heart into the very essence of the ship. The symbols erupted into a whirlwind of energy, illuminating the darkness with a fierce white that clamored against the shadows. But as the light grew, so did the shadows' screams, a chilling sound of chaos begging for release. Light and darkness converged, a clash that shook the ground beneath them. And then, just as quickly, it all went still. Was it the calm before a storm or a moment of respite? In the eye of that storm, amidst swirling energies and chaotic thoughts, silence reigned, leaving only the echo of her rapid breaths. "Jake, are you?" But before Sarah could finish, a shadow lunged from the now fading darkness, aiming straight for Jake. Time froze as she realized, the choice was not just hers anymore. "What have I done?" she whispered, heart pounding, as the reality of her choice crashed down around her. Would she dare intervene again? Or was this the moment she'd seal his fate? The shadows stirred again, eager for the answer, and Sarah felt the weight of their darkness pressing even closer as the next choice loomed over them ominously. A sinister growl filled the air as the shadow lunged. Sarah's heart raced, each beat echoing louder than the thunder above. Time seemed to stretch, a cruel mockery of her desperation. The hissing darkness pulsed with glee, ready to consume Jake whole. "No!" The scream erupted from her throat, raw and desperate. Adrenaline coursed through her veins as she flung herself toward him, reaching out with everything she had. In that moment, the ship shuddered violently beneath them, a groan of wood and metal protesting the chaos. Waves crashed higher, water sloshing around their feet, closing in like the very shadows eager to reclaim what they considered theirs. The shadow morphed, twisting, elongating, its form an abomination of human fear. Teeth glimmered amid the darkness, vicious and hungry. It lunged again, and Sarah felt the chill grip her lungs, a freezing terror threatening to immobilize her. "Sarah!" Jake shouted, his voice a lifeline in the storm. His eyes were wide, heart pounding, and she could see the flicker of hope battling with despair. "Do something." The sigils. They throbbed with energy, a resonance that pulsed with her desperation. In an act of survival, she focused, pouring every ounce of will into those symbols, fingernails digging into her palms as she summoned every ounce of strength. "Release him!" Sarah shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. "I am not afraid of you." The darkness hesitated, momentarily confused by her sudden shift in energy. It momentarily froze, and Sarah seized the chance. Light flared from the sigils, illuminating the ship and encasing Jake in a protective glow. But it was not just light. It was warmth, love, all the memories that anchored her laughter, simple conversations, small moments that made the weight of guilt slightly lighter. "Fight together." Jake's voice cracked, resonating through the air as if urging the shadows itself to reconsider its options. The darkness recoiled, hissing in fury, the monstrous form shifting erratically, its tendrils reaching back, drawn in by the warmth. It had tasted her fear, but now faced her defiance. "Everything you hold dear will slip away." A chorus roared from the shadows, voices layered with malice, twisted and echoing from ages long past. "Her death will haunt you. Can you save him at the cost of your own soul?" The words clawed at her mind, old wounds twisting deeper. Memories of her sister's accident flooded back the moment she lost everything. Was this what they wanted? To sink her back into despair, stripping away her source of light and hope? "No!" she shouted, shaking with rage and clarity. "I choose love. I choose him." Like a tidal wave, a surge of energy erupted from her chest, directed into the symbols. The ship shivered with the intensity, thudding against the weight of the darkness. Each sigil exploded with light, brighter than she thought possible, each pulse countering the gloom encroaching on their little haven, but just as victory seemed near, Jake hesitated. "Sarah! I can't, don't you dare!" The desperation clawed at her throat. "You are worth fighting for." The power between them surged, a current igniting a fire within her, weaving through their connection. They were intertwined, and with every heartbeat, she poured herself into him. The shadows trembled, menacing yet fearful, a vast ocean of malevolence threatening to swallow them whole. Together, he called, standing strong despite the chaos around him. We can't let the past define us. In that heartbeat, a surge of clarity washed over her. She felt the swell of their love curb the darkness, molding the shadows into something else, something purged of bitterness. Yet, behind all their collective power lay an unsettling whisper, an ancient truth. But what will you sacrifice to keep this love alive? As the shadows continued to pulse and shift, Sarah faltered. What choice would she have to make next? An ominous wave crashed above them, washing over the ship, dragging at her feet and pulling her closer to that dark temptation. The shadows shrieked, and she knew. One final sacrifice awaited. One that lay dormant, ready to shatter her resolve. Hold on tight. Jake yelled, gripping her hand with white-knuckled strength, but Sarah's heart sank. I need to know. Would she risk it all for him, or let fear dictate her course? The shadows were hungry, and they wouldn't be denied. Choose. The darkness hissed, its voice entwined with a chilling laughter, urging them toward a cliff she couldn't see into. Was love worth the darkness that loomed in the shadows? Would she sever the tether that connected them, or plunge into the void that awaited? Time ticked on, her decision hanging heavy in the air. The ship shook again as if caught in tumultuous seas of emotion, each wave tossing Sarah between hope and despair. Shadows twisted closer, tightening their grasp, their whispers clawing at her consciousness. Sacrifice, sacrifice echoed around her, a siren song desperate for blood. Sarah. Jake's panicked voice pierced through the chaos, anchoring her in the chaos. We are stronger together. Remember our love. His words sparked a flicker in her heart, igniting a will she thought wasn't there. Together, she whispered through clenched teeth, but sacrifice, a very real price loomed in every syllable. It tugged at her resolve, gnawing at the edges of her soul. What do you want from me? She shouted into the swirling storm of darkness. The shadows groaned, their voices blending into a twisted melody. Let go. Let one perish, set the other free. A shudder pulsed through her as she confronted the dark truth. The curse demanded an offering. Faced with that grim reality, Sarah felt her heart draw tight. Her mind flashed back to moments before, the echoes of laughter, the warmth of a shared space. Those cherished memories shimmered in stark contrast against the grasping shadows. I won't let you take him. She screamed, struggling against the advancing darkness. Will you pay the price? The shadows hissed back, sinister glee tinged with fear dancing in the air. One shall live, the other shall embrace the void. Each figure writhed, beckoning her with twisted fingers, taunting her with an instinctual fear of losing Jake. Her chest tightened, the weight of betrayal slamming down upon her like a lead blanket. Would she really abandon him? Sarah, Jake breathed, desperation lacing his gaze. We can fight. You don't have to do this alone. Fight. Break the curse. The call echoed in her mind, the tether they shared like an anchoring lifeline. The symbols shone brighter, responding to her resolve like stars in a blackened sky. She channeled the strength of their connection, pulling it into her core. No more games. She roared into the maw of shadows. In that moment of determination, she felt a surge of love, a fiercely radiant power vibrating from her heart to every inch of the ship. I will not choose between us, she declared, her voice ringing with cosmic authority. We will end this together. The darkness recoiled as the glowing symbols throbbed in synchrony with the heartbeat of the ship. But the shadows lunged again, more furious than before, ravenous for an offering, and yet they hesitated. Her emotional energy shook the very foundations of their menace. You cannot deny our bond. She shouted, her words twisting through the air with newfound ferocity, but the shadows slithered closer, their malevolent whispers fogging her mind. One must fall. The ship's timbers creaked under the pressure, an ancient weight threatening to splinter. This isn't just a choice of life or death. Sarah's heart resonated fiercely, her thoughts swirling with memories. It's about redemption. I will not be scared into silence. With fervent focus, she pressed her palm hard against the nearest glowing sigil. Its warmth surged through her, wrapping around her heart, connecting everything that made her human. Within that ocean of swirling shadows, she found herself stepping deeper into the embrace with Jake. Glimmers of hope surged as their fingers intertwined interwoven lives ready to fight back. The shadows, sensing the shift, shrieked and clawed. She won to choose. Eviscerate her spirit. But Sarah clung tight to their connection. I choose love. The declaration burst from her, igniting the symbols with blinding brilliance. The walls shuddered violently, energy pulsed through her, surging into gut-wrenching clarity. She channeled everything she had, her love, fear, despair, all morphing into a haven for Jake. Light erupted, spilling over the shadowy figures, forcing them to wilt as if the essence of every drop of sunlight had pierced through the tempest. Will we surrender to despair? She roared once more, enkindled with passionate strength. Shadows screeched back, retreating slightly as if her light had singed them. A sudden calm fell still upon the hold. Beneath it buzzed an electricity, fizzing with resentful whispers. The shadows erupted one last time, a tempest of rage. You are bound by this decision. One shall be claimed. Then I will let go of the fear that binds me. Sarah shouted fiercely, her spirit aflame. I refuse. With a heart full of fierce resolve, she turned to Jake, their eyes locking. Whatever comes, we face it together. As one. Time seemed to stall. There was only them, will entwined, ready to leap into the unknown. I believe, she whispered, feeling the depths of love crash into the layers of despair. No matter the cost, Jake replied, sealing their destiny. Together. The shadows recoiled, shrieking in an agony that reverberated through the ship. The connection between them flared, light flooding the space where darkness had existed. In that explosive moment, the ship erupted. Light and shadows clashed harshly, creating a luminosity so bright it sparked across the ocean. A shockwave cascaded away, carrying echoes that faded into nothingness. Silence. As the dim composed into stillness, Sarah gasped, heart racing. Each figure the tortured souls lost to the ethereal light, their residual echoes fading like whispers in a gentle breeze. Then, nothing but freedom singing in the shimmering air. This is it. Jake breathed, dazed. They stood together, not as victims lost to the tide but as survivors reborn. The ocean's calm mirrored their hearts, a gentle lull as twilight descended, a soft embrace after the storm. Together, Sarah grasped Jake's hands, warmth radiating between them, tethering their souls. The chilling tide had found peace, and so had they. As she looked out across the horizon, Sarah felt a sense of closure enfold her like a warm blanket. The burden was lifted. They were free. And in the lifetime of choices ahead, there would be more love, more laughter, as they stepped together into a future unmarred by the weight of shadows. So, bask in this moment, for it is but the prologue of their story yet unwritten, and with that, let the waves carry their echoes into the distance, whispers of hope riding on currents yet to come. Now, here's where you come in. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories we have coming your way. Smash the like button now if you want to feed the algorithm and keep us telling tales that tug at your heart. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. What do you think will happen next? And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support is what keeps the story alive.